And I want to welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm excited to have my friend Charles Epstein here to join me in this conversation. I have just got a couple of slides here to do some intros. We're actually formalizing ourselves a little more. And so, you know me, I am the CEO of HR Rebooted. We're helping organizations navigate this evolving role of AI in the workplace and how it's transforming the workplace, as we were just talking about. And my friend Charles is here. He's the managing director of AIX, the AI Exchange. He's the founder of Backbone and managing director of AIX, a multimedia platform focused on helping leaders and HR professionals navigate the future of work in an AI-driven world. He hosts the AIX Factor podcast and publishes the AIX Files, where he explores building resilient, adaptable, and emotionally intelligent workforces. Welcome, Charlie.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello to everybody. Glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Michelle. Really appreciate it. Um, maybe because I guess everybody knows you, just maybe be appropriate to give a brief description of how we met, which wasn't that long ago. I know you had been talking with the CEO and founder of HR.com, and in that conversation, she said, "Hey, you got to get on the X Factor podcast." Of course, we had you on the X Factor podcast, and it was a great conversation. And then we got to talking about AI readiness. You were developing a tool to assess that. AIX, we were sort of doing that as well. And, at the same time, I was developing a workshop titled From Anxiety to Agency. And it really also goes to readiness and really the central premise of it, and which goes to a large extent the central premise of AIX, is this idea that, AI is introducing a lot of uncertainty and anxiety. I speak to a lot of HR people, CHROs, anybody, you know, vendors, analysts, everybody. And particularly HR people, always tell me, I'm sure you hear it all the time, will I have a job in a year? Nobody could legitimately answer that question. The best you can do is encourage somebody to develop certain skills that would give them uh, some discretion, some agency, if you will, over whether or not you're going to have a job in a year, which is to say, skills that are not new skills, creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, leadership, all this, but adapted, to world of AI augmented work. And, to acquire that agency is to sort of overcome that anxiety and chart your future. And that's sort of teed up this conversation. Of course, the other important element that Michelle brings to this conversation is the governance piece. And just before last couple of thoughts. Initially, I developed AIX to talk about responsible AI, which is obviously still important. But I've done a lot of work and had done a lot of work in the behavioral health, mental health, mobile health, wellness space, and technology. And it seemed a really interesting convergence, something that not a lot of people were talking about. So I'm bringing a lot of interesting people into this conversation. But the governance piece um, is sort of responsible AI in a sense by other means. But I also think what's interesting about it, and again, I'll give it over to Michelle in a second, is that particularly in the world of AI, I think generally speaking, but particularly in the world of AI, it's not just governance. It's not just a risk mitigation strategy. It's actually something that gives you some safety, some guardrails that actually can produce good work, can prompt innovation, creativity, and so forth. So I think it's a little bit of a counterintuitive thought process there. But in any case, we did this last thing. A couple of weeks ago, HR.com launched a new virtual series called AI for HR. And the very first one, I asked Michelle if she'd do this presentation, again, because what she talks about and what she's going to talk about are two really important components of, AIX, which is to say, um, the idea of safety, the idea of readiness, and some of the good positive things that emerges from that.
hmm No, great points. We use responsible use as well, because when you start talking about ethical use, people start questioning what that means. And I don't think we have a standard
Right,
definition. Where
right.
responsible use, I think, is much more easily understood, everywhere. So,
Yeah, right.
um, so great. Yeah. And this is meant to be a conversation. So the original presentation that Charles was referring to was 30 minutes, and we nailed it in 30 minutes. So we've got some extra time. So please feel free to chime in, ask questions, use the chat, raise your hand, shout it
By the
out.
way, Michelle, you nailed it because you brought that in. It was a lot of your doing, just FYI. So need to
Thanks.
set the record straight.
Thank you. Let's start with in the chat, if everybody can pick an emoji on how you think your organization and your employees are feeling about, or your employees and your organization are feeling about AI right now. I love that one.
That's a great
We got a
start.
smiley face, Karen. That's
You
great.
didn't do this in our presentation. This is
I
this
didn't. We
is
have a little more
yeah,
time,
yeah.
so where can I find head in the sand? I love that. Yeah, it's a bit of a mix, right? It's a bit of the wild, wild west still with AI. And a lot of things that we're seeing with AI is there's some anxiety, and I'm not sure that leaders have quite figured out how to address that. And an interesting article that Charles wrote, he's got a Substack, AIX, check it out, but he wrote an article about how leaders are now telling people to use it. Like, you have to use it because I told you so, which I don't know, that doesn't work for me and my kids. So I'm not sure it's going to work in the workplace.
It's interesting how you conflate those two, but I defer to your more extensive experience on both
Yeah, yeah.
things.
We tend to be more inspired to do things than told to do them, I think, though, in the
Yeah.
workplace. And there was a great study that, thank you, Charlie, you also shared with me. It was called The Impact of AI in the Workplace by Mellon Data Science Strategies and the Work Institute. And when I first looked at this, I said, okay, 40% feel uncertain, 29% are concerned about skilled colleagues being more secure, 40% worry that AI could replace their jobs. They're not huge numbers. I mean, 40% is a decent number, right? Not to shake a stick at, but it's not 60% or 70%. But really, what's behind the data, I think, is really important. So as we dive in to that, it actually changes based upon the generations in your workplace. So the baby boomers who have a shorter runway, right, to be in the workplace because they're going to retire, they are retiring, are less concerned, right? They're not worried. 20% of them are worried that AI could replace their job or aspects of their job. But as you start to move closer to some of the younger generations who have more of that runway and have that runway in front of them, they're really nervous. The numbers go up. 52% are worried about what it can do. I have friends who they have children going to college next year. They finished their soccer season in the fall and they did a whole senior day and for them. And I talked to the parents and I said, what are they going to do for college? And they're in their senior year and they're like, they don't know because they're worried that AI, whatever they go to school for, could not be a job in 4 years, right? The AI could replace it or it could change drastically. So they're really trying to think about what jobs are going to be available. Dara, I like your emoji for them. And they're thinking, I have a friend who her son's thinking about becoming like a park ranger or something like that, fish and game officer, because he doesn't think that would be taken by AI. So we're not really talking about it in the workplace. We're not talking about it at the collegiate level either. And so there's a lot of anxiety around what's going to happen to my job. And I think that's one of the biggest anxieties that we're faced with. But there's also, as you mentioned, Charles, the ethical piece of it, right? How are we using it? How is the organization making decisions? How is this impacting my performance rating? If, do we have any security risks, right? Now we've got to worry about deep fakes. I got a text the other day from my 9-year-old son that said, Mom, I got a new phone. I dropped my phone in the water. This is my new phone number. Save it. He was at school, and we don't have any bodies of water right now where you could drop a phone in and it would actually get wet. It's all ice still. So I knew it was a scam, but those things are happening. They're becoming more and more prevalent. And so we have to worry about that, the security from inside the organization, right? What trade secrets are being put into AI? What information is being put into AI? How are we handling that information? But then what about the stuff outside of our organization that can come in and affect us because of AI? They're worried about loss of autonomy. I talked about decision making, right? There's a lawsuit, a class action lawsuit going on right now where a bunch of employees were let go because their performance numbers were suffering. They weren't meeting the performance standards. And so they let them go. Well, the performance standards were wrong because AI made a mistake. And so they were making decisions based upon the data that's in front of them and not really digging in and validating that data. Psychological safety and well-being is a really important piece. Every AI implementation is going to be different because every organization is different. We have different strategies, we have different values, we have different cultures. And those are the things that need to be included in your AI strategy. What we're seeing too, and Predictive Index wrote a great white paper about this, is that the organizations that led their AI implementation with psychological safety and well-being were much more successful. And so that's a key piece in calming some of those anxieties that employees are having. And then
I'm
transparency.
assuming, I'm sorry, Michelle, I'm
Yeah.
assuming also trust is a major issue there because that sort of goes both ways. I mean, for instance, sometimes I'll write something and someone will say, oh, Charles, did you write that or did AI write that? I'm a writer, so of course a little bit insulting, but um, you know that there's a lot of that going around. People who are putting out work that is sort of AI augmented, that sort of um, encroaches on the expertise of somebody in your team. They know that you don't have those skills. I went to school, I have these skills. So I think there are a lot of mistrust that is percolating uh, because of how people are using these tools.
Right. I think there is. And that's also around the transparency. How are we using it? And nobody asks me if AI writes my stuff. I must not be a good writer, Charles.
No, I don't get it often. I'm just using it as an example, but I know that that's out there and it's a
Yeah.
legit thing. And fortunately, these days, there are a lot of tells if somebody's using AI, but besides
Hmm.
the point.
Hmm. And I also think when we're not able to address employee concerns and anxieties, that gap for trust, it just gets deeper and deeper. And so, if we're concerned and we're asking our leaders or we're asking other professionals in the organization, what's going to happen with my job? And the answer is, I don't know. We're not even thinking about it right now. They're not sure, like, should I start looking for another job? Should I think about doing something different? Should I maybe get educated so that I have some additional skill sets, but what should I do? And so they need to lean on leaders. And that same white paper from Predictive Index said that the person that the employees trust the most in their organizations is HR. And so they're going to go to HR with these concerns and they're going to listen to what HR says for the answers. So we just start thinking about what are the answers we have to give them. And if we don't know yet, but this is what we're doing to look into it, or this is the process we're using to form that, that's a better answer than I don't know or not right now, or you just have to use it because I said so. I think learning the tools too, I can't see the full chat here. Hold on. Jason, is a really important point too, right? How are we teaching people how to use the tools and regardless of what generation they're in, because they're all going to be using it. We're seeing a lot in in companies investing. I think there's a recent study that said 96% of organizations plan on integrating, or 96% of leaders, not of organizations, of leaders that took this survey said they plan on integrating AI in their organizations in 2026. Yet the adoption is significantly low. We're seeing people are not using it. And this report, it shows about on an individual contributor level on the bottom here, this chart shows about only 11% of employees are daily users of AI. So we're spending billions and billions of dollars on this technology, yet only 11% of our employees are using it on a daily basis. There's a huge disconnect. It gets greater as you move into management and leadership. Not significantly on these charts, but it does get greater because they're closer to the decision making. Um, they understand where they can make decisions or not. And Charles brought up in the beginning what we do is governance, and I really believe that the gap we're seeing is a lack of governance. Does anybody want to take a stab at what they believe governance is? Don't everybody speak at once if you have to raise your hands. So governance takes into consideration, yeah, a set of standards that guide. That's a great definition. It's much more than that. It's your oversight, it's your strategy, it's your policy, your documentation, how you're using AI in the organization and how you're communicating it. It's the whole kind of change management initiative. And then how you're implementing it and making sure that it's doing all the things it's supposed to do, right? I'm sure some of you have heard my daycare story. There was a daycare and they had a beautiful playground and they went outside for recess and they noticed that the children were not playing around the whole playground. They were just playing very close to the building and very close to the teachers. They couldn't really figure out why. They would tell them, go play and have fun, go play. And they would just stay very close to the building. They then put in a fence that fenced in the whole playground and the area they can use. And the next time they went out to recess, the children played the whole yard up into the fence. And as adults, I think that's a great example of when you give people the guardrails, right? And you tell them where they can play and where they can't play, where's the fence, they know what to do and they know how to operate and they're going to go do it and be fruitful, right? It's the same thing with AI. If we're showing, we're not talking about how we're supposed to be using it, if we're not talking about the transparency in the organization, if we're not talking about our policies and we're not training people, they're not going to use it. You can give them a tool all day long and they're not going to use it. I was at a conference a few weeks ago and there was a panel and they were talking about how they implemented AI in their organizations. And somebody spoke up and talked about how she was a career counselor and she was very disappointed that the candidate she was working with created a resume using AI and just sent it out and then couldn't get a job because she couldn't interview to that resume because it wasn't really her resume, right? It was AI built and AI created. And I feel like that is a governance issue. Are we training people? You know, she's a career counselor. She's supposed to be working with the person and teaching them if they want to use AI, how do they use it effectively? How do they use it responsibly and ethically, right? Depending on what their definition of ethics is. How do they use it responsibly? And that's a small example. But we're also giving out tools, like Oprah gives out prizes on her show. You get an AI tool, and you get an AI tool, and you get an AI tool, but we're not telling people how to use it. And then we get all bent out of shape when somebody is using it to craft emails nonstop and then they're just using ChatGPT, right? But if we're not teaching them how to use it and we're not seeing the adoption, it really comes down to the governance process that you've got in place. And so we can't expect adoption to change if we're not thinking about this process and how do we make sure we're governing it appropriately. Last year, 38% of employees said their organization has integrated AI technology, but yet only 25 to 29% of organizations have fully implemented a comprehensive governance program. So it's not lining up, and that's where the gap is within adoption and usage. So why is governance important? You have legal and compliance risks. We talked about some of that already, right? Who wants to be, you might want to turn your camera on for this one, Scott. Who wants to be, or who thought that Workday wants to be known for the first organization that messed up with AI and it's out there publicly, right? They've got this huge lawsuit and now they're trying to unwind the issues. It's
Believable
a, sorry?
and predictable. Unbelievable and predictable.
Yeah, yeah.
Shocking and not surprising.
But you don't want to be that first person. The EEOC has said if you make a decision based upon data used through AI and your decision is and the AI is biased or the AI was hallucinating or the AI was giving you false information or it was drifting, that's not the AI system's fault. They're not going to indemnify you as an organization. That's your fault because you made the decision. So we're hiring people or we're terminating people using AI, it can open us up to some risks. Workforce and cultural risk. We're talking about anxiety today, right? We have that's already in place. Employees are worried about job displacement. There's a really great article on The Executive. If you're not subscribed to The Executive, it's one of my favorite uh, HR executive, sorry, not The Executive, HR executive. One of my favorite articles. They've done a lot with AI. And there was an article that came out and it showed that Amazon and Walmart announced their results for the end of the year, for Q1, probably the end of the year. And Amazon had an AI forward strategy. We're going to implement AI and we're just going to cut jobs and not even think about it. Throw the baby out with the bathwater. We're putting in AI and we're cutting jobs. And they had results, right? Because they probably reduced costs from eliminating people. But what do you think that's doing to the anxiety within the organization? It's going way down and your turnover is going to go way up, right? Because you're thinking you're next. Keeps me safe? In the same article, they talked about Walmart, and this surprised me. Yes, Sarah, and culture goes in the toilet and people get scared they're next to go. Exactly. Your culture suffers, and then it's just a revolving door. Walmart, in the same article, said, yes, we have an AI strategy, but we have a people first strategy. And we are teaching them how to work hand in hand with AI and how to use it as a tool to supplement what you're doing, right? And to make you better. And they also showed results, and their results were fantastic. And so, on the flip side, what do you think that does to employee anxiety in your workforce and your culture, right? I've never been a fan of Walmart's employment practices until now, because those are going to be the ones that the people stay. They're invested in them. They're teaching them how to use it. They're teaching them how to use it to get better at their jobs. I was thinking the other day, so I said earlier for people that jumped on this call that I was able to like vibe code my first software. I'm an HR professional and I was blown away. Within an hour and a half, I had a fully ready to go performance management system. Now it's not as good as UKG's or anybody like that, probably not as good as Workday's, but it meets the need that this client has. And I was able to do it. And I just felt so energetic and so excited about it that I was like, what can I do next? Right? The innovation then starts.
But
Big
Michelle, if I
power.
may interject, I mean, I've done some of that stuff. I've used Claude Code, and it's an amazing tool. It's not as easy, particularly if you're doing something complex as people
Mhm.
think. It's not just giving it an instruction and go off and it comes back. It needs to be, it's iterative. You need to continue to interrogate until you get what you want. But I also think because it seems that it lowers those barriers. I was encouraged to bring out some projects that have been long, in my bottom drawer because all of a sudden they seem achievable with Claude Code. You don't need coders. You don't need to throw in X amount of money, to
Hmm.
build a prototype, but it can give you a false sense of security because that last mile, the proverbial last mile problem in telecom, there's that last mile problem that could really have disastrous consequences if you don't have the right people vetting that. And that
Hmm.
really takes somebody with an eye and understanding. You could use different chatbots or LLMs to interrogate the product, but this is something we actually still need that expertise. So it's great, but to a point, which is kind of where the governance piece comes in as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And you need that human oversight. And that's something that the government has, that so many states have said is that if you're going to be using AI for recruiting or other things like that for employment decisions, there needs to be some human oversight. And they want to see where that human oversight is as part of your response to a lawsuit.
But by the way, quickly, Michelle, I don't want to take up too much time, but one of the vibe code projects I did was I've been using Gmail as my backup since I think 2005. So I don't know, 300,000 emails, and I wanted to sort of figure out a way of paring it down. So I created this little utility, this app that would work within Gmail. Everything looked good. I finally got it to get where I needed to get it. Okay, go. And it gave me a report and said, okay, click. These are the emails you want. I did. And then it started going crazy. It started just willy-nilly deleting emails. I had to shut down my computer.
Hmm. Yeah.
So you got to be careful.
I would love somebody to come in and delete some emails.
Yeah.
But I know I hear what you're saying
Yeah.
that yeah, you do have, and you need that. That's where governance comes in. And there was an organization, to say corporation, out in Japan that implemented an AI strategy. They had a people first and a governance first strategy to implementing it. They saw 90% adoption, and they saw innovation go up where people were creating agents almost on a daily basis. And so you get that, yes, you need the oversight and yes, you need the governments, but you get that like connection of being and feeling empowered and being able to do something. And that's a great thing you can bring into your organization. And then we also know there's reputational and financial risk. We talked about Workday. I don't want to keep talking about them, but other organizations that are on the front lines for lawsuits. And then operational and security risks, not just what's happening outside, like the deep fakes, but also what are people putting into AI and how are we using it and how is our data security being managed? What happens if there's a breach? All of those things we have to think about, and that's all wrapped into governance. So I read a great book called The Coming Wave, and it was written by Mustafa Suleiman. And he said AI is an orchestra without a conductor. And I thought that was brilliant because it is moving so fast and it's just getting ahead of itself. And you can think about, some of the great composers when the music starts to get very that's what's happening with AI, right? It's just getting more and more, it's moving faster than we can connect with it. So I've taken his quote and transformed it to
Mm.
HR is the conductor because we have the people-centric expertise in our organizations. We have the responsible use and risk management, and we have the strategic business partnerships. This is the first time, as I said earlier, that this is the first time that our work will be so greatly transformed and the way we work will be so greatly transformed so quickly since COVID, right? And typically within HR, things happen and we're able to move with them and take them on because there's a set of rules, right? We get laws, we get regulations. We can go to that and say, okay, how do I follow it? What do I make sure we put in place? There's no rules here. And the same thing happened with COVID. There were no rules. We had to make them up, right? We had to figure out how to get people from the office to home and safe, or even people that were staying because they were still working in office because it was deemed a necessary thing. We had to figure out how to keep them safe on a day-to-day basis and get them home to their families. There was no handbook for COVID, and there's no handbook for this, but we figured it out in HR. And we did launch a white paper called The 12 Ways to Lead um, with AI. And it's on the HR Rebooted website if you want to download it, because that is a pretty good handbook on what you need to do um, to start managing this. But when I start talking about who should own AI, instead of this idea that HR is the conductor, I get a lot of pushback. It becomes a land grab. Why not IT? Why not this person? Why not legal? And it really is, it's not about owning it. The person that needs to own the AI strategy in the organization is the CEO. They need to be behind it, they need to own it. But HR is the one that's going to pull it all together, right? We have the ability to link arms with other departments. We can bring people together. We know who has to be at the table. We know how people are impacted. IT absolutely needs to be at the table. They need to make decisions around which tool we're going to use, how we're going to use it, and how we're going to implement it. But we need to make sure we're owning the policy, the training, and the enablement piece as well. So
I think,
just like
Michelle,
just like
if I
COVID.
may,
Yeah.
yeah, you and I kind of had that conversation about HR being at the table. That's long been a mantra. Somebody I know always says that I'm tired of having conversations about furniture. We need to move past that. You know, um, but there's been a lot of hand waving at that notion. It never quite happens. But I think if there's anything that's going to bring HR kicking and screaming to the table, it's this, because where does AI land most disproportionately on people? And so much of the HR function, right, is where it lands. So
Hmm.
yes, naturally HR needs to speak to IT and they need to speak to the CFO, people on the operations side. If anything, it's an all hands kind of thing. You'd think HR would be it.
Right. And
Excuse
our
me, AI would
governance
be it.
Yeah, our governance platform is built on the NIST standards, and we have 7 steps to governance. Our first step is to create a governance committee. You don't even need a system for that. Don't tell my partner I said that, but you don't need a system for that. You can create a governance committee, and that's how you can get started. And that is bringing all those people together, right? And including IT, including legal, and whoever else in your organization. Organization is starting to hire compliance officers. That conference I was at too, there was a gentleman there from Moderna, and I saw Unilever did the same thing. They actually took IT and put it under HR because they know how much this is going to impact the future of work
Ouch.
so drastically. And it's working really well for Moderna. And they talked about how they were doing it and how it works. And the IT team actually liked it because they felt like they could run things through HR and say, okay, what do you think about this and what do you think about that, instead of working in a silo.
I think John has a question. Michelle.
Go ahead,
No,
John.
no question, just a comment. Um, um, you were talking about who tech. I am certain that finance will want, or about half of the companies that have operating HR departments to be the head, which is at its greatest disservice for people, again, and still just like Sherm. So I'll have some more comments at the end, but I wanted to throw that in, not because I dislike finance, it's that I love people.
Hmm. I think you're right, and I think that's what we're seeing right now with the lack of adoption is that nobody's really owning it. And somebody else at that conference said to me, "It's
Well,
just like culture. Everybody should own AI." And I'm like,
you
"No,
know,
no, no. If
Michelle,
everybody owns it, nobody owns it."
how prevalent is this position of the AI coordinator or the AI director? I've seen more and more organizations have somebody who fits that description.
Yeah, there's more and more organizations
And where are
hiring.
they being pulled from, I wonder?
I'd have to look, but I know a lot of them are in HR. They're pulling the HR person into it, right?
Well, it's
We've seen it more and more. Even globally, it's happening. Because like finance, yes, they can do it, right? They can give out the tool, they can approve the spend, and they can say everybody use it. And then they can watch the analytics. But this is a change management initiative. This requires the strategy, the policy, the training, and then enablement. And that's not
yeah.
something that's with that finance even wants to touch.
Michelle, Sarah in the chat has a comment. I don't know if you want to address it here. I think it's a good comment. Culture goes in the toilet when people was it and people are scared they are next to go.
Yeah.
Um, I think there is another element that's sort of tearing at the, notion even of culture. That goes to something we were talking about earlier, goes to sort of trust that people can bring their own AI tools and they can do work by themselves that previously would require other people in collaboration. We also know it's weird. I've seen some studies that collaboration has not just gone down, but the output has been diminished in some way, shape, or form because of AI. So I think AI tools are, I think, going to create more independence among people in the workplace. Is going to be less of a need
Mhm.
to be, collaborative, and obviously that's not a good
Yeah,
um,
I think
thing for culture.
Megan said this to me once, and I thought it was brilliant. She's a mutual friend of ours, and she said we're giving people individual tools and expecting team results. I'm just gonna
Exactly.
pause because it's so powerful and it's so true. We're handing it out and we're saying, well, you can get better at your job. But how does that help me with the cross-functional work I'm doing with other departments? And that's where HR can really shine. And to your comments before of the proverbial strategic seat, I'm so excited. I have gone to SHRM conference after SHRM conference and webinars throughout my career talking about this strategic seat, but nobody was talking about how to get it. How do you do it, right? We have it now. We have the tools to do it. And I don't believe that HR is going to be fully disrupted. I think we're going to have to make this shift and change our focus because the tactical stuff will be done for us, which some of us will be very excited about, myself included. And it gives us time to do the coaching, the organizational design. How do we design the workforce of the future that includes both AI and human resources? How do we upskill and reskill people so that they're constantly ahead of it? Because this isn't something you train them how to make a widget and you're done, and then they get on the manufacturing line. This is something we have to continually do over time. I also think your compliance HR people, your payroll people, those folks, they'll be running your governance program. So it's a great I'm excited about it. I think it's a great opportunity for HR to really transform and take that seat. I call it the Chief Human and AI Resource Officer. So Scott, was your comment the one in the chat, or did you want to say something?
Just the one I put in the chat.
Yeah. Yeah, letting IT own governance is like letting the groundskeeper run the golf and country club. Yeah. And I just want to reiterate, the person that needs to own it is the CEO. You're not going anywhere if you don't have CEO backing and support, right? HR is the conductor. HR is the one that's pulling it all together. So these are our 12 ways to guide AI agency in your organization. And it doesn't start with do it because I told you so, which I love. I love that article, Charles.
Right.
You define a clear AI-driven HR strategy, prioritize and don't boil the ocean, right? We're not going to be able to do it all. And this is something that's going to take time and you're going to learn from it, right? Use the agile methodology, iterate, get better each time. Continuously educate and upskill. And that's your team or yourself. I think HR people tend to put ourselves last, right? We make sure everybody else is taken care of. And then we're like, oh yeah, I have to get my HR certification redo my HR certification next month. I better take some classes. So educate yourself and upskill yourself and then do that to the team. Assess your current state and AI readiness. Your organization has to be ready for it. And I have an example where talking about Gmail, Charles, when I was in an organization, we were at Outlook and the IT team was like, well, we're going to move over to Gmail. And they just said, you all know how to use email, so you'll know how to use Gmail. Here you go. And this is the early days of Gmail. And some of us were like, okay, we'll figure it out, or we asked questions, or we, you know, flubbed our way through it. And then some people said, no way, I'm not doing it. And even the CEO said, I'm not using it. I just set up my Outlook so that Gmail comes into my Outlook and I can keep using Outlook. And so if the CEO is not behind it, the organization is not going behind it. It took years for us to be fully adopted with Gmail in the organization. Develop, iterate, and communicate policies. Your policy is something that should stand outside of your handbook because you're going to need to change it regularly, right? You might want to start with a guideline, something simple, think about how you're going to use it, and then start to iterate and get better on that. And then continuously communicate. If people don't know how they're allowed to use it, right? You're not setting up the fence or the guardrails, they're not going to use it. You may have some people use it because they're like, I'll ask for forgiveness. But the others are going to not, they're going to worry more about it. And it's going to increase the anxiety. Move from experimentation to leadership. So start playing with it and then start leading the pack, right? Start showing your organization what can be done with it. We're really only scratching the surface with what we can do with AI right now. Using it, most people, most organizations use it as a chatbot, right? You put in, I want to do this, what should I do? Other organizations that are thinking about it more strategically are actually putting in your workflows. And how do we improve our workflows using AI? And how do we get better? And then you can create agents and employ agents in your organization to help with some additional tasks. Communicate regularly and transparently. It's okay to say you don't know, but here's what we're doing about it, right? Here's how we're learning. Here's how we're figuring it out. Create a communication strategy so that you have points in time of how we're going to communicate, when we're going to communicate, and people can look for it. If you have that governance committee, that step one done, that can be your group that answers questions. And so when employees have questions, you can say, I'm not quite sure we've figured that out yet, but we have a governance committee that's working on it. And here's the chair of the governance committee. You can talk to them, or you can go to their next meeting and ask questions. Partner for AI governance and risk management. This is important. This is linking arms with other departments and bringing them in, right? This isn't a land grab. We have to do this together. This is an organizational change management initiative. Link arms with other departments. Champion for human-centered AI. Read the article from the HR executive about Walmart and Amazon. It's really interesting. And a lot of people are already talking about how do we make this more like human-centered and put people first. And I think it's great to see that they're setting the standard for that. Prepare for the future of work. What are the jobs we're going to need? How do we train people? What are their roles and responsibilities within our organization? Who's going to take them? Is it going to be AI? Is it going to be a human? Are they going to work together and train leaders on it? Promote ethical AI and bias mitigation, so responsible use. Make sure you're challenging it. Make sure you have human oversight for bias. And then change management. This should be at the top, right? It's a change management initiative, guide the change management, but lock it all in with your culture for adoption. It needs to align with your culture. It can't be kind of out to the side. But I got this question, Charles, when I was at the conference last week, and I was on a panel with Megan. And the question was, what would you hate to see automated with AI? Like, what would create goosebumps for you or like create that anxiety for you?
And you're asking me this question.
I'm asking you on the spot. I didn't prep you for this.
What would give me goosebumps
If AI
if,
automated this for you in your life, maybe.
and we're talking specifically work related. I need to be fenced in. I need some
Well,
governance.
so Megan said anything to do with her health or medical, like medical benefits. So if AI is automatically choosing her medical benefits and not letting her kind of dig in and understand what's the best choice for her and her family, that would be something that would cause her concern. So that kind of plays the line of both family and work. So did you?
Yeah. Um, yeah, that would be a concern. I don't know. I did mention, and I think this goes to anybody who does anything, I guess it can be even broadly described as creative. The concern is that too much is automated, the product, in some cases, particularly those where good enough is good enough,
Mhm.
can't make those fine distinction between what's good enough and what maybe somebody else can bring where it gets it to that next level, the whole idea of going good to great. So, my concern is that, AI just gets good at many of the things that we currently are very good at, and it narrows what human endeavor looks like. So that's my concern. I don't know if that's a great answer, but I know that's an existential question to a lot of
Yeah.
people. You mentioned the anxiety is different depending on which cohort you find yourself in. I'm at this end of my career. If I were early on, I'd be having to seriously reconsider going into any form of communications, publishing, advertising, public relations, anything.
Hmm.
Um, and I ran into a young gal. She is a junior in high school, so she still's got a ways ahead of her. And she's looking to be a graphics designer. And I asked her if she uses any of the AI tools, and she just automatically, reflexively just poo-pooed them. Oh, they don't do what I can do. I said, well, I'm trying to be diplomatic. I said, well, that very well could be the case, but it behooves you to know have a real firsthand idea of what they do. So you're always tracking it because what they do today, they're going to be more and more powerful. Today is the least powerful version, as kind of a cliche, the least powerful version, the least sophisticated version of AI ever. Or from this point forward, tomorrow it's going to be better and better. So it behooves you. It's fine to have that confidence. It's fine to cultivate your craft or your art, but know what these tools can do, adapt to them. Again, it goes to this whole idea of agency, from anxiety to agency. To have that agency, got to develop. These aren't new skills. It's just their skills within the context of AI, but that changes everything.
Hmm. Yeah.
Changes culture. It changes, um, there are just so many things. I'm writing another piece going from techno stress, which is a term of art that some group came up with, to go from techno stress to techno joy. I'm not even sure what techno joy is, if it's a thing, or even if it's something that is desirable within a workplace. But there is something to be said for something, it's not quite job satisfaction. It's that spirit you have that makes you proud of what you do, that makes you proud of being affiliated with an organization, proud of the team that you're working with, your colleagues. I think a lot of that also is in jeopardy. So it goes beyond just, do I have job satisfaction? Is it pride? And obviously that translates into some very tangible business benefits, productivity, retention, all that, leadership. But
Hmm.
I've already said too much.
That's great. It does sound like a nightclub, Sarah. Heather, do you want to comment on your comment? It's okay if you don't.
Sounds like a
Sure.
nightclub.
That one hit a little home for me. My daughter's a graphic design major. So we have these conversations about, yes, know what it does, know what it doesn't do, because that's where you fill in the gap. And I think that's kind of across the board. There are things AI will never be able to do. And that's where we have to remember our strengths.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Right.
but to
And
have some
everybody have that
humility
human oversight, right?
and to have some humility in saying that, the only thing I'd say, Heather, is that it can't do it now. Right. I wrote a whole piece and I did a whole experiment and with some of the five of the leading chatbots. Can they, based on this comic formula, can they produce comedy? Can they produce great jokes? Again, kind of a narrow thing of doing it a little tongue in cheek. But right now, they're not good at humor. Ask it in 6 months.
Hmm. Yep. This is so great. We do have a leadership readiness assessment. It does take a bit of time. It's about 30 questions. So take it when you can sit down and actually go through it, but it will actually look at your preparedness to lead AI initiatives across six different dimensions. And you do it and the report comes to you, so you get the full report. And as we close, we want to thank our 2026 sponsors, Vertical Line, Cross Insurance, and Get Your Edge. And if anybody's interested in being a sponsor, please reach out to me and we will have a good conversation and get you on the agenda. And this has been approved for HRCI recertification credits. So here's the number. It's 737492. So if you're getting your recertification credits. The really great thing about HR Rebels is not just the conversation. That's really the great thing that we have here. But if you attend our meetings, you can get more than enough recertification credits each year. We typically have around 50. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. If anybody has any other questions or comments, please join in. We have some time. And then we also have a quick survey you can take to share your feedback. All right. Well, thank you all for joining. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.